In one family, there was an old tradition. Whenever a new wedding came up, any old wedding sari, jewelry, or keepsake from a previous generation's marriage had to be brought out at least once, purely for blessing and good fortune. That custom brought everyone's mind back to a massive wooden trunk from the grandmother's era, locked away for years in a second-floor storage room of the family's ancestral home in a quiet corner of Mymensingh, a house with heavy carved doors studded with old brass nails, wide-open courtyards, a broad wooden staircase worn smooth by generations of footsteps, and that particular smell old houses always carry: aged cloth, old wood furniture, and something faintly sweet, like affection gone a little stale with time. Growing up, the family had always been told that one storage room at the end of the second floor was simply too dusty for children to bother with, though the tone in the adults' voices whenever it came up, the careful way they moved around even mentioning it, always suggested something more than dust lived there. As the wedding of a young woman we'll call Elena approached, relatives poured in, and the quiet old house came alive with noise, cooking, and celebration. Elena herself had always been calm and cheerful, but as the day drew closer, an odd stillness crept over her, dismissed at first as ordinary bridal nerves. 3 days before the wedding, the women gathered to sort through old jewelry and saris, and the conversation turned to the trunk. Growing up, the children had heard endless theories about its contents, but one rule was enforced with unusual rigidity. If it was ever opened, it had to be opened in daylight, never after sunset. On the day it was finally brought down, real fear flickered across the older women's faces for the first time. Elena's cousin, Marcus, and 2 others were sent to retrieve it. The storage room door was only half open, as if it hadn't been opened in years. Even in the dim light, the room felt sealed away in some other point in time. The trunk itself, dark-stained wood with brass feet, was far heavier than a few old clothes should be, its wood faintly damp, carrying an old, waiting smell. Carried down to the courtyard, the rusted lock had to be broken open with a hammer. Inside was exactly what the stories promised: folded silk, embroidered shawls, old photographs, a small silver box, a carved wooden case, and delight rippled through the gathered women. Elena watched along with everyone else, perfectly normal, until the last fold of cloth was lifted and an envelope was revealed underneath. The moment it appeared, the courtyard's mood shifted instantly. It was thick, yellowed paper, sealed with red wax, faintly marked as if someone had once tried to open it and stopped. Faint handwriting read, "Not to be opened after Maghrib." The eldest Anne took it with a fear on her face that wasn't ordinary surprise, as if something old and dreaded had reappeared. Elena stared at the envelope as though she already knew it, as though some deep connection already bound her to it. It was decided the letter would be opened before evening prayer, but the day's chaos delayed it. The envelope was covered with cloth and set aside, everyone assuming hiding it from sight would end the matter. Through the afternoon, though, one witness noticed Elena kept glancing toward that covered table, and twice the sound of something heavy walking, then stopping, came from the storage room upstairs. When Marcus checked, no one was there. After evening prayer, the house grew heavy, not just from the coming of night, but because the envelope remained unopened and the trunk unreturned. A witness overheard the mother and aunt arguing in whispers, "I told you not to open that trunk." The custom had to be followed before the wedding. If I'd forbidden it outright, everyone would have grown suspicious. By then, one certainty had already formed. This had nothing to do with the letter's contents. It was something the older generation had known about all along. Around 9:30 p.m., the power went out. In those few minutes of darkness, a witness clearly saw someone standing beside the covered table. A phone light swept the spot. No one there. Then Elena's voice, quiet but clear. Who moved the cloth? The covering had indeed been pulled half away, the red seal glinting in candlelight. No one admitted to touching it. Power returned, but the house never settled back to normal. It was decided the envelope would be locked in an armoire until after dawn prayer. Around 10:30, Elena cried out in her sleep, murmuring, "Don't open it, it'll come back," with no memory of it once woken. The eldest aunt's face went pale. "Let the morning come," she said, "then I'll tell you everything." No one slept after that. The house sat in oppressive silence, creaking beams, dripping water, a bed shifting somewhere, until a sound like something heavy being dragged came from the storage room. Marcus tried to laugh it off as the wind, and 3 slow, evenly spaced knocks answered him from the door. No one went up to check. The moment dawn prayer finally rang out, the entire house seemed to physically release a held breath. Afterward, the family gathered in the drawing room. Elena kept occupied elsewhere, and the aunt broke the seal. Inside was a single letter in a trembling woman's hand, the words themselves carrying visible dread, smeared ink, sentences trailing off mid-thought. The letter described how, before her own wedding decades earlier, the writer had glimpsed an unfamiliar woman's face inside her own wedding trunk, calm, still, watching as though she already knew everything to come. The feeling grew night after night, someone unseen, touching the old clothes, circling them, slowly drawing the new bride toward herself, trying to stitch old memory into new life. Once, she heard anklets outside her door, though no woman in the house wore any that night, and turning, saw only a black shadow's edge slip beneath the door. By the letter's end, the handwriting grew frantic. She warned, "If this letter is ever pulled out again before a new wedding, never read it after Maghrib, and on that same night, no old item should be unfolded, no photograph looked at, because whatever wakes in this house doesn't attach itself to cloth or jewelry. It attaches itself to a person's identity. Her final line has stayed carved into memory ever since. That thing doesn't come for the memory, it comes to recognize. And once it begins recognizing itself in someone new, know that it's already far too late." When the aunt read that line aloud, her voice trembling, the room went utterly still. Elena was never told any of it directly, only that some old fabric had been damaged and repacked. But the lie couldn't hold for long, because the real change had already begun showing in her groom Daniel. That afternoon, he was found sitting alone in the courtyard, as though someone stood directly in front of him, listening intently, his eyes fixed on nothing anyone else could see. Approached and asked what was wrong, he surfaced slowly and asked, "Auntie, who wrote that letter?" No one had mentioned it in front of him at all. That night brought the first real proof of danger. Around midnight, a scream tore through the house. Elena sitting bolt upright, eyes open but not fully conscious, her red scarf lying on the floor, exactly as if someone had draped it over their own shoulders and carefully set it down. Daniel suddenly spoke in a harsh voice unlike his own. "Don't touch that scarf, it's not mine," then broke down sobbing, startled by his own words. The next day, Daniel grew pale, barely ate, and seemed to take a beat too long, recognizing familiar faces. That afternoon, his young sister ran screaming from a room where he sat before a mirror, calmly removing glass items from a shelf one at a time. He later admitted, quietly, that someone had been standing behind the mirror, though the mirror's position made that impossible without everyone seeing. That evening, a witness saw him freeze in a doorway, his eyes tracking slowly from top to bottom, as though something enormous stood there. "You genuinely can't see anything?" he asked, his voice carrying not doubt but hollow despair. On the third day, right after evening prayer, the worst moment came. Daniel's gaze locked on the corner where the silver box sat, the color draining entirely from his face. A voice that wasn't his came from his throat. She's saying I've come late, that this room used to be hers. The room froze. Someone shouted to throw the box outside immediately, but the eldest aunt cut through sharply. Absolutely not. Nothing leaves this room. No one touches anything. In that instant, it became clear. The real danger wasn't a haunting. It was something slowly spinning a web around Daniel's very sense of self. A respected local imam was sent for at once, and the moment he arrived, the household's panic steadied. He asked no unnecessary questions, made no show of dramatics. He simply observed, then had the silver box wrapped in clean cloth and set apart without touching it himself. Sitting on the floor beside Daniel, he recited quietly, then had blessed water touched gently to his lips. The instant it touched him, Daniel's hands shook violently, his eyes snapped shut, and the room's temperature audibly dropped. The imam's expression never changed. He simply firmed his voice and continued reciting. Daniel eventually said, in his own voice, "This is my room." The imam raised a hand for silence and told him to recite the declaration of faith. What answered, in an old, exhausted voice, was, "I said don't delay." Even the men waiting outside heard it clearly. For nearly half an hour, the imam recited without pause, Daniel's condition swinging between limp exhaustion and violent shaking, until it finally settled. Afterward, the imam gave clear instructions: never mention the letter or trunk in front of Daniel again. Never leave him alone. Keep recitation playing quietly in his room at night. And never again, under any custom or tradition, open those old heirloom items. Sometimes, he said, old objects don't just carry memory. Something else lingers with them too. After that night, peace slowly returned. Not entirely normal, but no longer terrifying. Daniel never fully returned to his old cheerful self, but that frozen, stone-like look never came back either. The wedding went ahead successfully, and Elena moved to her new home not long after, a quiet reminder that in families where old houses and old heirlooms run deep, something ancient can sleep beneath all that inherited love, waiting only for the right night to wake. A young man growing up in a quiet rural home collected, over the years, a handful of strange encounters that only made sense once strung together, small on their own, but unmistakable once he began telling them one after another. The first happened by a nearly dry riverbed close to his house, where as a teenager, he'd sit alone in the dark whenever he felt low, sometimes as early as 8 in the evening, sometimes well past 11, the water in that stretch of river running low and distant except during the monsoon floods. One moonless night past 10 p.m., sitting quietly with his thoughts, a violent splash suddenly tore through the water below, the unmistakable churn of something large moving through it, even though the water there barely reached ankle deep in the dry season. He was close enough that 10 more steps would have let him see clearly what had made the sound, but he never found the courage to look. Something about the force of it, the deliberateness of it, felt as though it wanted his attention specifically. He got up without a word and walked straight home, refusing to glance back even once. The same thing happened again several nights later, closer to 8 in the evening this time. He later learned the spot carried a reputation among the older villagers. People casting nets there sometimes pulled them up completely empty, despite having clearly felt or even seen a large fish struggling inside just moments before. A second incident came years later, riding home late past a cremation ground and across that same river. A woman's scream tore through the rain, seemingly inches from his ear, on a completely empty road. The chill of it didn't leave him until he spotted another person on the road ahead. Then came incidents involving his brother's new wife. Around 2021, his brother brought his bride home for the first time, dressed in a red wedding sari, before the two were set to travel to a new posting that same night. Just before 3 a.m., the narrator was woken by frantic pounding on his door, his mother, panicked, needing help immediately. He found his sister-in-law thrashing violently, eyes shut, clawing at her own throat, screaming for something to get away, impossible strength in her limbs. A respected local elder was fetched, who calmed her with recitation, oil, and blessed water, explaining afterward that something had followed her home, drawn by the sight of her walking in broad daylight in bright red. A second incident followed months later at their new posting. Craving a dried fish dish, the brothers sent their mother to fetch some, carrying it home beneath the family's lychee tree, worth remembering. His wife offered to cook it herself. He returned from the market to find her face flushed with sudden, inexplicable fury, refusing to speak, kicking furniture. When he touched her shoulder, a voice that wasn't hers snapped back. "Why are you touching me? Do you even pray?" The same elder, recognizing this was beyond him, referred them to someone more experienced. That specialist arrived, and through extended ritual, conducted what amounted to a full interview with the entity, later confirmed to be a spirit residing in that same lychee tree, visible just outside the narrator's own bedroom window. The smell of dried fish cooked beneath its tree, and her presence there, had provoked it into trying to claim her entirely. After considerable effort, it was driven out, and something resembling neither a dog nor a cat was seen darting toward that tree that same night. There were no further incidents, though the family understood exactly what kind of neighbor lived just outside their window. The most recent incident happened only the week before, involving the narrator's 21-month-old niece. Returning home from a happy doctor's visit with sweets to celebrate, the baby began crying inconsolably past 11 p.m. Nothing soothed her, and the family found her staring, wailing, toward one dark corner of the property, repeating, "Don't want to go," striking her own cheek with unusual aggression. The usual rituals had no effect this time. Finally, the narrator and his brother took a sweet from the fridge and left it as an offering at the base of the lychee tree. Within 30 seconds, the crying stopped entirely, and the baby settled calmly into her father's arms, as if nothing had happened at all. A family moved into a large rental building in Dhaka around 2009, with somewhere between 50 and 60 separate rooms crammed into narrow corridors, sharing just 4 bathrooms between them all. It was the kind of building where every wall seemed to carry someone else's conversation, someone else's cooking smells, someone else's footsteps, and yet, from the very start, one particular bathroom stood apart. It would inexplicably lock itself from the inside, over and over, no matter how many times it was checked, no matter how carefully the latch was tested beforehand. A couple who rented the room adjoining that bathroom experienced something almost immediately. On their very first night in the building, lying in the dark, the wife saw someone standing at the foot of their bed, a shape, motionless, watching. She woke her husband in a panic, and by the time he'd fumbled for the light, there was nothing there at all. This repeated on the second night, and by the third, their entire bed seemed to lift off the floor and slam back down on its own, hard enough to rattle the frame. Furious and terrified in equal measure, The wife shouted into the darkness, demanding to know why it kept disturbing their sleep, turning lights on and off, making noise in their room. The next morning, they went straight to the building manager and requested a different room entirely. Once relocated, nothing further ever happened to them again. One rainy evening, the boy's mother, returning home from her long shift at the garment factory, cooked dinner and decided to bathe afterward, given the weather. She filled 2 large metal buckets with water and carried the first one back to their room. As she reached for the second, a tremendous noise erupted from that same troubled bathroom, the unmistakable sound of a door being forced violently open, as if something furious wanted out immediately. Startled, she muttered under her breath that she meant no offense, silently hoping whatever it was wouldn't turn its attention toward her. She watched, frozen, as a black shape emerged slowly from the doorway, the noise fading with each step it took. She dropped the second bucket entirely and bolted back to their room, calling frantically for her husband. Nothing further happened that particular night, though sleep came slowly for either of them. A few nights later, the narrator, then just a young boy, was walking with his grandmother near the main gate when they both clearly spotted someone crouched low near the entrance, doing something at ground level, as if digging or searching for something in the dirt. When they moved closer to see who it was, there was no one there at all, just empty pavement, the gate swinging gently in the breeze. His grandmother, shaken but trying to stay calm for his sake, dismissed it as simply their tired eyes playing tricks in the dim light. Not long after that, his father, needing to use the restroom late one evening, sat down in that same problem bathroom and felt something stroke his back gently, almost affectionately, an unmistakable touch, unmistakably hand-shaped, moving slowly across his shoulders in the dark. Thoroughly unnerved, he cut things short immediately and hurried back to their room, locking the door firmly behind him. Whatever had touched him seemed to follow, footsteps audibly pacing back and forth just outside their door for a full 10 or 15 minutes afterward, slow and deliberate, never once trying the handle. Sometime later, the mother, exhausted and frustrated during a small argument, snapped at her youngest son, recently injured in an accident and barely able to walk, telling him sharply that he couldn't just die like that he wasn't allowed to simply go. That same night, sleeping in a row alongside his siblings and grandmother, the family was jolted awake by his sudden, terrified scream. Rushing to check, they found him lying against the front door, as though he'd been dragged there in his sleep. Asked what had happened, all he could say, shaking, was that something had grabbed his leg and pulled him there, though he couldn't explain how or by what. No one in that room slept again for the rest of the night. Sometime after, that same younger brother passed away. The injury that never seemed to heal properly despite endless doctor visits was eventually diagnosed as bone cancer, far too advanced by the time anyone fully understood what they were dealing with. He died at just 7 years old. The family always maintained, looking back, that whatever presence lived in that building never seemed to intend real harm. The pulling, the noises, the strange gentle touches were unsettling, certainly, but never outright violent. Still, the memory of those years, and everything that quietly happened within those walls, has never fully faded for the family who lived through it.